Genesis chapter 31, verse 1 through verse 16, Jacob's departure. BC 1739. And he heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's. And of that which was our father's hath he gotten all this glory. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. And the Lord said unto Jacob, Return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before. But the God of my father hath been with me. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me, and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. If he said thus, The speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, The ring-straked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring-straked. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father, and given them to me. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes, and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see, all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointedest the pillar, and where thou vowedst a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours, and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. Jacob is here, taking up a resolution immediately to quit his uncle's service, to take what he had and go back to Canaan. This resolution he took up upon a just provocation by divine direction, and with the advice and consent of his wives. Upon a just provocation, for Laban and his sons had become very cross and ill-natured towards him, so that he could not stay among them with safety or satisfaction. One Laban's sons showed their ill will in what they said. Verse 1. It should seem they said it in Jacob's hearing, with a design to vex him. The last chapter began with Rachel's envying Leah. This begins with Laban's sons envying Jacob. Observe, 1. How greatly they magnified Jacob's prosperity. He has gotten all this glory. And what was this glory that they made so much ado about? It was a parcel of brown sheep and speckled goats, and perhaps the fine colors made them seem more glorious, and some camels and asses, and such like trading. And this was all this glory. Note, riches are glorious things in the eyes of carnal people, while to all those that are conversant with heavenly things they have no glory in comparison with the glory which excelleth men's overvaluing worldly wealth. Is that fundamental error, which is the root of covetousness, envy, and all evil too. How basely they reflect upon Jacob's fidelity, as if what he had not gotten honestly. Jacob has taken away all that was our father's. Not all, surely. What had become of those cattle which were committed to the custody of Laban's sons, and sent 3 days' journey off? Genesis chapter 30, verse 35 and verse 36. They mean all that was committed to him. But speaking invidiously, they express themselves thus generally. Note,
One, those that are ever so careful to keep a good conscience cannot always be sure of a good name too. This is one of the vanities and vexations which attend outward prosperity, that it makes a man to be envied of his neighbors. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 4. And who can stand before envy? Proverbs chapter 27, verse 4. Whom heaven blesses, hell curses, and all its children on earth.
To Laban himself said little, but his countenance was not towards Jacob as it used to be, and Jacob could not but take notice of it. Genesis chapter 31, verse 2 and verse 5. He was but a churl at the best, but now he was more churlish than formerly. Note, envy is a sin that often appears in the countenance. Hence we read of an evil eye. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 6. Sour looks may do a great deal towards the ruin of peace and love in a family, and the making of those uneasy of whose comfort we ought to be tender. Laban's angry countenance lost him the greatest blessing his family ever had, and justly. By divine direction and under the convoy of a promise, the Lord said unto Jacob, Return, and I will be with thee. Verse 3. Though Jacob had met with very hard usage here, yet he would not quit his place till God bade him. He came thither by orders from heaven, and there he would stay till he was ordered back. Note, it is our duty to set ourselves, and it will be our comfort to see ourselves under God's guidance, both in our going out and in our coming in. The direction he had from heaven is more fully related in the account he gives of it to his wives. Verse 10 through verse 13, where he tells them of a dream he had about the cattle, and the wonderful increase of those of his color, and how the angel of God in that dream, for I suppose the dream spoken of verse 10, and that verse 11 to be the same, took notice of the workings of his fancy in his sleep and instructed him, so that it was not by chance or by his own policy that he obtained that great advantage, but 1. By the providence of God, who had taken notice of the hardships Laban had put upon him, and took this way to recompense him. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee, and herein I have an eye to that. Note, there is more of equity in the distributions of the divine providence than we are aware of, and by them the injured are recompensed really, though perhaps insensibly. Nor was it only by the justice of providence that Jacob was thus enriched, but 2. In performance of the promise intimated in what is said. Verse 13, I am the God of Bethel. This was the place where the covenant was renewed with him. Note, worldly prosperity and success are doubly sweet and comfortable when we see them flowing, not from common providence, but from covenant love, to perform the mercy promised. When we have them from God as the God of Bethel, from those promises of the life which now is that belonged to godliness, Jacob, even when he had this hopeful prospect of growing rich with Laban, must think of returning. When the world begins to smile upon us, we must remember it is not our home. Now arise, verse 13, and return. 1. To thy devotions in Canaan, the solemnities of which had perhaps been much intermitted while he was with Laban. The times of this servitude God had winked at, but now, return to the place where thou anointedst the pillar, and vowedst the vow. Now that thou beginnest to grow rich, it is time to think of an altar and sacrifices again. 2. To thy comforts in Canaan. Return to the land of thy kindred. He was here among his near kindred, but those only he must look upon as his kindred in the best sense. The kindred he must live and die with, to whom pertained the covenant. Note, the heirs of Canaan must never reckon themselves at home till they come thither, however they may seem to take root here. With the knowledge and consent of his wives, observe. 1. He sent for Rachel and Leah to him to the field, verse 4, that he might confer with them more privately, or because one would not come to the other's apartment, and he would willingly talk with them together, or because he had work to do in the field which he would not leave note. Husbands that love their wives will communicate their purposes and intentions to them. Where there is a mutual affection, there will be a mutual confidence, and the prudence of the wife should engage the heart of her husband to trust in her. Proverbs chapter 31. Verse 11. Jacob told his wives, 1. How faithfully he had served their father. Verse 6. Note, if others do not do their duty to us, yet we shall have the comfort of having done ours to them. 2. How unfaithfully their father had dealt with him. Verse 7. He would never keep to any bargain that he made with him, but after the first year, still as he saw. Providence favored Jacob with the color agreed on. Every half year of the remaining 5, he changed it for some other color, which made it 10 times, as if he thought not only to deceive Jacob, but the divine providence which manifestly smiled upon him. Note, those that deal honestly are not always honestly dealt with. 3. How God had owned him notwithstanding. He had protected him from Laban's ill will. God suffered him not to hurt me. Note, those that keep close to God shall be kept safely by him. He had also provided plentifully for him, notwithstanding Laban's design to ruin him. God has taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. Verse 9. Thus the righteous God paid Jacob for his hard service out of Laban's estate, as afterwards he paid the seed of Jacob for their serving the Egyptians with their spoils. Note, God is not unrighteous to forget his people's work and labor of love, though men be so. Hebrews chapter 6. Verse 10. Providence has ways of making those honest in the event that are not so in their design. Note, further, the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22. 4. He told them of the command God had given him in a dream to return to his own country. Verse 13. That they might not suspect his resolution to arise from inconstancy or any disaffection to their country or family, but might see it to proceed from a principle of obedience to his God and dependence on him. 2. His wives cheerfully consented to his resolution. They also brought forward their grievances, complaining that their father had been not only unkind, but unjust to them. Verse 14 through verse 16. That he looked upon them as strangers, and was without natural affection towards them. And whereas Jacob had looked upon the wealth which God had transferred from Laban to him as his wages, they looked upon it as their portions, so that, both ways, God forced Laban to pay his debts, both to his servant and to his daughters. So then it seemed, 1. They were weary of their own people and their father's house, and could easily forget them. Note, this good use we should make of the unkind usage we meet with from the world. We should sit the more loose to it, and be willing to leave it, and desirous to be at home. 2. They were willing to go along with their husband, and put themselves with him under the divine direction. Whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do note. Those wives that are their husband's meat, helps will never be their hindrances in doing that to which God calls them.